أنا هيوا عثمان من شبكة 964 الإخبارية. لا أعتقد أن هناك أي داعي أو أي مسبب لتقديم سعادة السفيرة. I'll switch to English in a minute. You don't have to. I'm just doing the introductions. سعادة السفيرة طبعا من إحدى أهم الشخصيات الموجودة في المشهد العراقي في السنوات الثلاث الماضية أعتقد. وأتمنى أن تكون هذه المحادثة تضع بعض الضوء على بعض القضايا التي لا نراها في تغريداتها المستمرة والتي نغطيها في 964. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. Thank you for accepting the invitation. I hope we can have a conversation that can make some news as a journalist. And we follow at 964 your tweets very carefully. But there are always certain things that we do not see or do not read, and for obvious reasons, or understandably, in your tweets that we would like, and your statements, we would like to see here or to learn more about. Let me start with the elephant in the room, or the elephant in the region. The US is known to be a leading human rights advocate, and you've had some stances in the past. And the Iraqi elite in general, we are talking about an Iraq-US relationship, a lasting US relationship that is 360. Some of them say we can't afford to do 360. It is 180. And I'll come to that in a minute, in my next question maybe. But right now, the Iraqi elite understands the importance of a continued and a long-lasting relationship with the United States. But what they are perplexed or baffled with is that the US stance from atrocities in the region, starting from the atrocities of Saddam in the 80s, all the way to what we are seeing in Gaza today. What do you say to our elite?
Well, first of all, I want to thank very much the organizers of the MERI Forum. You know, every year they bring hundreds, and I see it's a packed room today, hundreds of people to come and hear from many, from diplomats, from government officials, from senior leaders, from deep thinkers of the situation, both here and in the region. And I'm very pleased that I can be here today and again this year to participate in a dialogue that I think is very important, and that, you know, advances the knowledge and the thinking of many here in Iraq and around the region. So, so thanks a lot for putting this together. I'm sort of looking at Luar, but he's not. He may be back there doing his organizational things. Let me talk a little bit about you know, the role of the United States and our 360 relationship here in Iraq and what we're trying to build. That absolutely continues and has a very important human rights component to it. As you can imagine, 360, not 180, 360 is we do everything. We want to move the relationship that we have had for the past decades or so from a very heavily focused security relationship to one that really puts equal weight, maybe even more weight, on things like trade and energy, human rights, governance, building a private sector, supporting the aspirations of the Iraqi people, especially women and youth, in terms of building their future. There have been significant changes, I think, over the past 2-3 years, and I think, you know, the United States, as you called us, the big elephant in the room. There are other...
The region.
But there are other big elephants in the room.
Of course.
And in the region.
And hence our 180, my statement about 180, not 360.
And so I've been very, I think, fortunate to serve in Iraq here over the past 2.5 years to help really advance our relationship in these areas that are covered, frankly, and have been covered in the Strategic Framework Agreement, which is still very much a framework, an agreement that we and the government of Iraq believe is still very useful in charting and setting our relationship. And so this is kind of where we are right now, and it's been really important. I can get into a lot of other details,
right.
but and frankly, to your point about the situation in the region overall, being able to open up that aperture to talk with the government of Iraq and the people of Iraq about the situation in the region is really important. And we've been able to do that. Those are, it's been a difficult issues here that countries in the region have grappled with, to include Iraq, but it's been very much part of our political and diplomatic engagement to talk about the region and how we ensure that this region doesn't find itself either intentionally or unintentionally in a war.
Thank you. Did you see the Israeli planes flying over Iraq to Iran?
Did I see the Israeli planes? Did you see the Israeli planes flying?
The embassy.
Did you see them?
Did the embassy see them? That's my question. You're supposed
Look,
to be
the United States did not participate in this in the Israeli strikes, and Iraq is a sovereign country, and we don't control Iraq's airspace.
Talking of sovereignty, I would like to talk about economy. I mean, Iraq's economy heavily relies on oil revenues, and this is managed by the U.S. Federal Reserve. Is there, how do you see the future once there is a 360 relationship? How do you see this relationship materializing, especially with all the current restrictions on Iraq's trade, sometimes with Iran? I mean, we've seen recently Oman and UAE, they can pay the Iranians the few billions that they have or for trade, but Iraq always has issues with the U.S. Treasury over being able to pay Iran for energy subsidy or for energy, for electricity, especially during the summer days. How do you see that relationship once we reach 360?
Well, first of all, let me just point out the U.S. Treasury doesn't run Iraq's energy sector, nor do we run their economy. I want to be really crystal clear about that. So I think to answer your question, we have, as part of our efforts to activate the SFA, in the very first HCC, or the Higher Consultative Council that we have under the SFA to kind of organize the work that we want to do, we made back in very shortly after Prime Minister Soudani came to his position, we made energy independence, energy autonomy, a very important element of our work that we were going to do together. And that meant a number of things. First of all, it was making sure that the Iraqi government could look at the resources that they have here in Iraq and make sure that they are used most efficiently. Mm-hmm. And one of the most important components of that was to look at capturing flared gas. We were very much encouraged by the discussions that were going on with the French company Total to help build, and included in their work was gas capture, was more efficient infrastructure, and so building Iraq's capacity to use its own resources was very important.
But between now and then,
well,
Iraq
between now and then,
needs...
we've accomplished a lot on that. It was also working with improving the electrical grid. You need a modern, functioning grid in order to make sure that the Iraqi people don't experience the kinds of shortages that they've been. So we've done that, and we have one of our premier labs, the U.S. Pacific Northwest Scientific Laboratory, that's working on that aspect of it. So we have tried to tackle with the Ministry of Electricity, with the government of Iraq, ways in which that we can strengthen and build towards a more independent, self-sufficient energy sector.
My question was about us being able to pay Iran. There are some billions of dollars somewhere in some bank that when you speak to the bankers or the finance people, they say, we cannot pay them because we will run the risk of being under sanctions by the
well,
US.
That's the answer. You've given me my own answer, which I was going to say, which has to do with there are sanctions against Iran, and I think those who want to either find ways to circumvent them, or they find themselves violating sanctions, will find themselves in real trouble.
So how come Oman and UAE are not violating the sanctions by paying Iran?
Well, I'm not going to get into a lot of these details, okay. But suffice it to say that the way in which we want to ensure that Iraq has a way to provide energy, electricity, oil, revenues from their very important sector is to have a modern, technically efficient infrastructure and sector, to include, connections with their neighbors, which is Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi. There are ways in which we are harnessing that electrical grid in the region to help support and help Iraq build its independence and its sovereignty, so that it doesn't have to find itself or have the unpleasant choice of violating those sanctions. Okay,
so trade with everyone but Iran. Thank you.
Well, there are ways that trade is allowed under sanctions, and that has to do with humanitarian assistance, and the Iranians know very well exactly what that means.
Okay, because yesterday, I think, there was the news that the dollar window will close by December of this year, in 2 months' time. And this has sent some alarm bells amongst the banking community as to how they will trade with dollars.
Well, the banking reforms, and that actually has been one of the very positive things that has been going on over the last couple of years, and that is that Iraq is now very much part of building the kind of international banking sector that it should have if it wants to be really a member of the international economy. And banks that have corresponding relationships in the international community with international banks Some of them will have to restructure themselves, and there are definitely ways in which they will continue to be able to access dollars.
Right. We move to the U.S. military presence. Again, it has been an issue that we hear about it a lot in Baghdad, not in Kurdistan. The Kurds welcome the U.S. presence forever, actually. That's what I hear from them. When do you think, when we hear two stories, we hear from the American side that yes, we will stay, we will not stay, but then we hear from the Iraqis, some of them say complete withdrawal now, yesterday, and then others say no, we need to be more prepared. Is Iraq prepared for a complete withdrawal?
I think, well, first of all, the statement that the joint statement that was issued on September 27th about the transition of the coalition's military mission in Iraq in about a year, I think is a recognition that the work that the coalition has been doing and the prospect for strengthening bilateral security and defense relationships is a recognition that the security forces in Iraq, and frankly here in Iraqi Kurdistan, have been making progress to be able to continue the enduring defeat of ISIS, which is the mission of the coalition. That's why we were all invited here 10 years ago. There is a capability here that has improved and enhanced over time. The decision by the government of Iraq to transition this into bilateral relationships, which many of our friends are here in the audience, is also a recognition that these security defense relationships are important. We expect to be able to continue working on the enduring defeat of ISIS. ISIS is not down and out, as we have seen recently, but the steady pressure that we can all work together on and continue to build the capabilities is a very good decision that was made. There are some who don't agree with it, but we're dealing with the government of Iraq, and those are the decisions that we've made together, very much in deliberative fashion over the past year.
Those who do not agree with it, we see them in various institutions, especially in Baghdad, not in Kurdistan, as people who are becoming more and more in control and powerful. How do you plan, as part of the transition to the complete withdrawal, if that to happen, how do you plan, or how do you think the Iraqis should deal with those who are very much against the US and are closer to the other side in the conflict for Iraqis? And how should Iraqis deal, or how do you see them as a threat to a future bilateral relationship between Iraq and the United States?
I think what our discussions and our efforts with the government of Iraq are very much in line to ensure that the security forces answer to the commander-in-chief of this country. Those who believe that they speak on behalf of the government, I think it has been made very clear by the Prime Minister himself that decisions about the security of Iraq are wholly owned by the government. Our discussions and our decisions that we make together about the kind of defense relationship, bilateral relationship we want to build, will remain in discussion with the government. I myself am optimistic that we will be able to have the kind of defense and security relationship that was envisioned in the SFA, and that frankly will also help Iraq build its security and ties with the neighbors. Iraq is a very important country that will contribute to the stability of this region. And the more we can be a partner in doing that, the better off Iraq will be in achieving its stability and its security and, frankly, its own sovereignty. And that is a mutual goal that we are trying to achieve in our work that we're doing together in this transition and in building a future long-term relationship that we are committed to.
Some point in the past, I was an advisor to President Jalal Talabani, and I accompanied him in 2 visits, or many other visits, but I remember 2 visits distinctly, one in Tehran and one in DC. One to DC and one to Tehran. And he had one message to both sides. He said, we do not look at America with an Iranian eye, and we do not look at Iran with an American eye. Could you tolerate that today from Iraqis?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Are we tolerating? It's a question. Iraq is a
will the United States understand the Iraqi position of having a special relationship with Iran and yet maintain a relationship, a healthy relationship with DC?
Well, I think that, again, Iraq is a sovereign country, and it needs to shape its relations with Iran. It has a long history. It has economic ties. It has social ties. It has religious ties. We recognize that. What we ourselves are trying to build stronger ties between Iraqis and Americans. After more than 20 years of having worked side by side on many of these issues and frankly spilling our blood together to make Iraq safe, to make Iraq stable, to make Iraq a democracy. So I think that we are going to pursue the mutual interests that we have, whether it's on security issues, on education, on building a private sector, on trade, on continuing to support Iraq's economic development. It has a lot of work that it needs to do on just, strengthening the business environment. So those are the areas where I think we will be concentrating and encouraging Iraq to work with us. Our position on Iran is not a surprise to anybody. So I would say right now the relationship that we have with Iraq is one that's moving forward on a lot of mutual interests, and it's a positive one, all in all. There are lots of challenges, lots of things we have to work through, but frankly, there are lots of challenges and lots of things that Iraq has to work through with many of the countries that would like to be part of strengthening their relationship with Iraq and the Iraqi people.
On that note, can we move to Kurdistan?
Sure.
The city where we are in was hit twice with ballistic missiles, and both attacks were in close proximity to the new building, the new consulate building, or it flew over Erbil. Weren't you able to intercept these missiles as we saw when Iran was trying to hit Israel?
You're right, we are building a very nice new consulate, and we're very proud of this new consulate. It is, I think, a real testament to our commitment to having strong ties with the region and and advance our relationship with Kurdistan. We are, as part of our work that we do on defense and security, it obviously very much includes defending and supporting the security and defense requirements of this area. And we're going to continue to be able to do that.
I know, but the two attacks,
and the two attacks,
one was 1.4 kilometers away from that building. The second one that killed Peshra Dizei was 4.2 kilometers. We, in 964, we drew a Google map of the triangle, and it was amazing how we heard nothing from the U.S. consulate.
Well, I would point out exactly who were the ones behind those attacks.
Iran.
Well, my point is they're a great neighbor. So what were they doing attacking the Kurdistan and those sites here? That's a big question.
So if Iran attacks, it's up to or Turkey attacks, it's up to the Kurds. The U.S. has
no... I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you know, we are here, we defend, we have always, since you know, we have always been defending U.S. personnel and U.S. facilities, but part of our future defense discussions are going to be about how we have strong, we build a strong defense for Iraq, if that's exactly what they are interested in doing.
So if Iran wants to do something, now is the time, but they shouldn't attack U.S. personnel.
Well, we've made that very clear. We've made that very clear that that anyone who attacks our personnel and our facilities, we will respond in self-defense. That has been very clear, and we've said that very clearly publicly.
Just U.S. personnel and facilities.
That we are here to, we are going to protect our facilities and our personnel.
Thank you. Final question. It's a Kurdish one again. We often hear from the Kurdish leadership about a special relationship with the United States. And some analysts even call it a one-sided love story. As the son of one of the very first Kurds who made contact with the United States back in the 70s, and I hear his disappointment afterwards in 1975, 88, 91, and later. The question that is in the mind of every Kurd in the region: does Washington have a Kurdish policy? Do they see the Kurds as Kurds, or they see them as good Iraqi citizens, good Syrian citizens, good Turkish citizens, and good Iranian citizens?
Well, first of all, when you say it's a one-sided love affair, I would disagree with you. I would say it's a two-sided love affair. And we have...
Is it?
Well, I know that the United States, first of all, has this very strong commitment and a very strong presence, and have done a lot of work
question, you just
here
said we were hit twice.
In Iraqi Kurdistan. And we have you know, in many ways, Iraqi Kurdistan has been the beachhead for so many American businesses to come in and establish their foothold in investment, not just in Kurdistan, but also in Iraq. They have invested here, and the investments have done very well, to the point where it allows them to go in. Some of our franchises started here and are now in Baghdad and other places. Iraqi Kurdistan has really demonstrated that democracy it can be strong. Look, the elections that just happened on October 20th. I mean, they were lively and spirited, like most elections are, But at the end of the day, it was a huge turnout, what, 72, 74%? I think, you know, that is a really strong model for
Do you have
the
a
elections.
Kurdish policy or an Iraqi policy?
We have an Iraqi policy, and Kurdistan is part of Iraq. But it doesn't mean that, you know, we also don't have our relationship, our special aspects of our relationship with Iraqi Kurdistan as we do with other parts of Iraq. Thank you.
Madam Ambassador,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.